My name is Paul Ray. I work on the Bing user experience team at Microsoft. I've been here for almost 4 years on the Bing team, previously live search and all that, which I'll get into in a minute. I want to spend time with you today talking about how we came up with the design for Bing, what was important to us, sort of the steps we went through, because I think they really helped us get to a good spot, and hopefully some of those lessons are useful to you in your jobs. Sorry if this gets old, but I don't know how many other speakers have been doing it. It'd kind of be nice to get a sense of the crowd, dev versus design versus kind of both. So any devs in the room? Oh, good mix. Designers, and I guess mixed people who do both. Awesome, thank you. So like I said, talk about how we designed it, what was helpful to us, how we use science to kind of help us make design decisions, how we use art to make some design decisions. I think that kind of the big takeaway for me going through this whole process was that as sort of a modern designer, developer, we are in a position where we have to kind of embrace both. There's definitely an emotional connection we want to make with users with our products, but there's a great deal of data and metrics that we should employ and use. And sometimes it's hard to make choices off of both of those. And I think if you're in one camp, it's tough. If you're willing to embrace both, I think your life can be a little easier. So that's kind of the thrust of this, and hopefully I can illustrate a bit of that as we go through the slides. First, though, I want to give just a quick history about Bing, how we got to the design process I want to take you through. Back in, so Bing started as MSN Search back in '98 using MIX10's search engine from Yahoo. Really used that up to about 6 years ago. We only started building our own algorithm and own search engine 6 years ago, so a bit of a late start. But prior to that, we were really just a face on MIX10 and Yahoo's back end. It was called MSN Search, kind of embedded within MSN. 2006, Windows Live, Microsoft Windows Live Search. Yeah, the names are awesome. Then I think Ballmer was like, hey, that's too much. Let's go to Live Search. So, so you can imagine, and kind of the purpose of this slide was to talk a little about why we rebranded. Rebrand, as you can see, was important. My mom had no clue where I worked. She was like, is it Microsoft Search? And I'm like, no, Mom, there's no such thing. It's Windows Live Search. And she's like, Google, right? And I'm like, no, it's kind of. But anyway, it was tough. And how do you convince people to try it out when they can't even really say the name, know the name, make an association. So definitely some branding issues. So we rebranded. Came up with a name people could say and spell. My mom gets it now, which was nice. She now knows what to do, and she goes to the page. So very important, because the rebrand basically gave us a chance to restart in the market. As you can tell, we've been around quite a long time and had built up a user base. But I don't know if they were necessarily people who knew about us, who were coming voluntarily, who could make the association. So we needed to do that through some marketing at it. And this opened the door for now the design and the product to shine and to allow people to come in and try it out. And I think the upside and the fun part of this story is that they did come and try it out when we launched in the summer. And since then, our market share has gone up. I mean, prior to that, you can imagine the chart looked like this. Just time, market share, all the metrics going down like this. The Bing launch leveled that out and has been moving it up. People know about it, they've tried, and thankfully they're coming back. So that was big. We were voted Best New Brand from Ad Age. TechCrunch said Best New Product Startup. Rolling Stone said Bing is the slickest, most distinctive piece of software Microsoft has rolled out in years, which was awesome, because that wasn't necessarily what we were going for, right? It wasn't about press write-ups. It just sort of happened. So it was really nice. And I say this not to mention as a marketing piece, but really to say we sort of stumbled upon a good thing here, and the design was a big part of that. So I kind of want to walk you through how we got there. Excuse me. So the big launch. Code name was Kiev. We always code name everything. I don't quite know why, but we just do. Name them after cities in this case. Kiev was the name. I mentioned it just because some of the comps you'll see later have Kiev embedded in it. Obviously, new brand was a big part. That was the main focus. But one of the other thrusts of it were reconciling features around a certain type of user. And as designers and developers, I think, and this is a big theme throughout this, it's important for us to have some core things to hold on to as we go to build and design. Because without them, it's very hard to judge how good a thing is, and it becomes just arguments in rooms over A versus B versus C, and it's so important to, if everyone in the room can agree, we're after B, and we will know when we hit B. And so the next set of slides talks about kind of what B represented to us, what sort of things we were going after. So who were explorers? Explorers represented a really 25% of all searchers, and this is a type of person. And I think all of us at one time or another are explorers. Another classification are productives. I think based on some searches we do, we're also productives. But here's what the user research came back and told us about explorers, and they represented really an interesting segment. They were people willing to try new technology. They liked surprises. They tended to get sidetracked, when using search. And not all the time. I mean, sometimes you're looking at Avatar showtimes. Just tell me what time is the movie, and you just want to go. But sometimes, and I think we've all done it, been on IMDb, and you start looking up a movie, and it's friggin' 20 minutes later, and you've clicked on 10 movies and read 10 things and made associations. You just kind of get immersed and don't mind getting distracted. People who enjoy discovering new things, people for whom, they say life is a journey. It's not really just finding the thing, it's kind of the process. So this was interesting to us trying to design a product that starts to pay off on this a little bit to differentiate ourselves. So, like I said, they represented 25% of all searchers, and 30% of all searches in the US at the time were done with this sort of explorer mindset. So we had a target. How can we design a product that's compelling to this class of people, these type of people? We had a mission. A mission came up from above, and again, that helped because this richer, more organized experience definitely played into our user experience design strategy, how we attack the design of the page, accomplishing key tasks. Again, as a designer, that's something else I can design for, I can help bring to life. Delivering great results, I think that's just table stakes in the search business right now. I mean, it kind of doesn't matter what the user experience is or design of a thing is if the product can't return great results. Because really, what's the point? So that's just kind of table stakes for the game. But there is room in the UX space to differentiate, to innovate, to move stuff forward. So we had users, we had identified, we had a mission. So we set about writing some design principles. And I don't know how many of you have time to do this. It definitely takes time. Often, many of our projects come to us on Wednesday and they're due Friday. And who the heck has time to write up principles for how I'm going to attack this week's project? And a creative brief. But to what degree you take on large-scale projects and you can invest the time, the principles really help. Because again, they help make the hard decisions and help focus what you're after. So here, I'm just sharing with these. We don't have to get into them too deep, but these are the ones that we wrote for the Bing launch. So obviously embracing the market, the audience, the explorers. And by that, providing features that delighted them, surprised them. Earning trust. Being very transparent about what we do. A good example of this one was we created a little widget to allow you to find searches you've done before. I think the stat is something like over 50% of all searches people do are searches they've done before, or related to a search you've done before. We typically search for the same things over and over again. Not because I think we forget, it's just people do it because it's habit. They remember that path and how they got to the thing last time. It's just easy. Search is a command line to the internet. It just helps. So we do stuff over and over again. So how can you build into a product a way for people to get back to that stuff? But at the same time, that can be creepy. Search results are sometimes private things, sometimes random things that you may or not use again. So how can you display that, but then allow users to turn it off, to get in and out really quickly? So that was one of the things. So the point there, the principle was every time we did something on your behalf, the user's behalf, we showed results they'd done before, or set a preference. We allow them to escape out of it real quick. Don't want this? Get out. So providing those escape valves every time we made an assumption was a design principle we were able to follow through on. Embracing the brand, a lot, as you can imagine, with the brand came a bunch of brand attributes from the marketing team. So those were great. Another kind of tool in the toolbox to help us hone down what we were trying to do. Making money, understanding the page is about ads and making sure the ads weren't bolted on at the 11th hour. Because it's kind of cool when you're really focused on the app and focused on the experience, and then it's the day before it's due and you realize, oh crap, we have a business here. We have to, if it's not part of the experience, it's really hard to put in gracefully. Showcasing the best, what are the big features? Organizing the page by relevance for sure. That's key. Obviously, speed in search is paramount. Being very thoughtful and deliberate about that as we approach the design. Giving enough, trying not to overwhelm when we return snippets of data that we're pretty confident you're after, but we could be wrong. So how can I give just enough to give you the right scent to follow without overwhelming? And being seamless, whether I do an image search, a video search, a map search, a web search, whatever, how am I seamless across the whole thing? How does our internal politics and our internal dev teams and product teams not show through the product, which if you've ever worked in a big group is so hard to do. And I won't get too much into these, but design problems, another thing we help us guide the design. Identify from a design perspective what things the design needs to solve. Rationalizing refinements. We had all kinds of things to help users refine searches, and refinements are big. I think it was a stat like 42% of all searches people refine somehow, either through requerying or clicking a refinement of some type. So we had lots of refinements, but as you know from trying to design, you can completely overwhelm with Chrome. And how do you allow the content itself to be king and the Chrome to fall away? So that's a tough one. Readability, scanning, paramount next to speed in search, right? People in and out of a search page quickly. You can't lose that. So, and encouraging it, but yet at the same time encouraging exploration, providing links to other interesting things. Passing an over-the-shoulder test. The point there is someone walks, you're at Bing or someone walks by and looks over your shoulder and goes, what is that? I can kind of tell it's a search engine, but it doesn't look like what I'm used to or what other ones I've seen. And again, seamlessness. Lastly, we had a big bet, and I promise I'll get to comps here in a second. The tech team had come back with this functionality of categorized search, the ability to take search and categorize it into what we thought were the most logical groups for whatever the user had typed. And I'll show you an example. So what is the phrase? Search results organized into categories that just make sense. And we felt that was a really big thing. There was a untapped need in the market for search to get more organized. People just didn't quite know that because you'd never really seen an organized search before. But when we showed it to people and got feedback, it was a big hit. So how do we build that into the experience, but still keep it true to the templates and conventions that search already employs? So that was another big challenge for the design team. So let me show you categorized search quickly. These were the early concept designs we had. So this is a query for British Airways, common query. Here we recognize it as an airline, and we realize that when people look for airlines, they typically do the same types of things. They look for flight trackers, they look to book a flight, they look for schedules. Many times they look just how to contact it. What's the friggin' phone number for British Airways? I just want that. Search engine, get me the phone number. So you can see the big kind of obnoxious green tabs at the top. Again, this was an early concept design to try to get the point across. Sort of said, this is relevant navigation. We understand British Airways, we understand it's an airline, and we understand what people typically do when they look for airlines. So here are what we think you might be after. So let's categorize this class of this query. Then we display sort of a very dominant entity card for British Airways. It's clearly a single entity, and try to bring up information that we know you might be after, the reservation phone number, getting right to their stuff. And more to the point of categorizing search, breaking up the page, web results. And as I scroll down the page, contacts, flight trackers, booking a flight, airline schedules, cities served, flight deals. So you can see we took a simple query, British Airways, and tried to return nuggets of digestible, consumable information that we felt made the most sense. Similar to car insurance. Again, another very broad query. What is a user looking for here? But we do know from patterns and signals we get through other queries that people typically they want to compare rates and quotes. They're looking for what providers are out there. I see millions of commercials, but there's a million of them. Which one do I pick? Looking for tips on buying and comparing. So how can you return a search results page that breaks that stuff up? And so here you can see it's broken out by carriers, rates and quotes, FAQ, articles. So that was the concept of categorized search. Trouble was, the design problem was those green tabs at the top. Where do we put them? They don't really exist in Search UI today, although they're a fairly common UX convention. Where is the most efficient, effective place to put them in the search UX? So that was our problem. Where do we put those categories? And so we started playing with some ideas. So I kind of want to machine gun through a number comps for you guys. I don't know about you, and holler if you're bored. I'll only show 6 or 7, but these are just comps the team had come up with, playing with both visual style as well as page layout and placement. And I always think it's fun when teams show kind of how they got to a final product, and you look at all the iterations. Sometimes the first or second one was better than what they shipped, but sometimes it's kind of fun to go through them. So here they are. So you can see the categories we've listed out over on the left. So tried them on the left. Tried them again as tabs across the top. Tried them big and juicy down the right. Tried them on the right again. And you can start to see playing with the idea, and I'll talk to this a bit when I talk about the homepage. Started to play with bringing the homepage photo onto the search results page. So this was both a look and feel exercise as well as a page layout. Really big tabs across the top. Hard not to notice those. You can imagine the problem with that is that supports elegantly maybe 3 or 4, but after that design is, you're going to run into, remember Amazon back in the day when they had like 3 rows of tabs and was like, okay, we need another design because the moment we add anything more, we can't support this. So MIX tabs a little tough. Right again, left, right, left. You kind of get the point. I like this one. This one was kind of cool looking. Sort of piano keys over on the left. Felt like this one sort of paid off on that design principle of highlighting the best bet, and if we thought categorized search and pointing people at these refinements was a big bet, was the big bet, this design helped pop those out. Left again, this one's starting to feel a little more like what we're going to ship. Starting to bring in the photo from the homepage, keeping it on the left, and then this is pretty close to what we ultimately shipped. So I show you all those to say, okay, well, yeah, that's a problem the design team had. So how do we solve it, and how do we do it? And so that kind of segues into the science of Bing. What things do we have to help us make decisions from a quantitative perspective and qualitative perspective with users? So a number of things, and I'll walk you through these. A/B testing. A/B testing, as you can imagine, is literally sending out to a percentage of users one design, to another percentage of users another design, and just generating metrics and usage statistics off of millions of people. So very quantitative, really tells you a number of things. So the things it tells you, which I happen to write down here, how do we tell if a thing is successful? So for example, if I flighted those categories on the left of a page and then flighted them on the right, well, what would tell me that one was more successful over the other? So a number of things we look for. Loyalty. How often did users return to any one of those designs? The effort they put in. What was the time to first click in either of those designs? What's the impact to revenue? Obviously important. And then what was the overall user success? What was their engagement over the course of a session? A number of different queries they did. What was their whole page click-through rate? What was their overall engagement with the product itself? So we put all that together, measure all of that, and then you start to paint a picture of A versus B versus C. These are what we call, they have tons of names, snippets, captions. These are really the atomic unit of search. These are results. These are 3 screenshots from the 3 big search engines. You can see they're pretty darn similar. So one of the tests we ran, and the reason I bring this up, is we ran a color flight. So how do you pick that blue? Like, what is the most effective blue for a link? That was one of the questions we wanted to answer. This was a couple years ago. So we ran flights of blue and literally just sent out variations to users of different shades of blue, different hues, different saturations, different levels of contrast. You can see it looks like all the search engines have sort of arrived around the same one. One could say, well, dude, just copy what everyone else is doing. Certainly copy the market leader, right? And that's an interesting approach, but we did also want to validate it through our own quantitative methods. So we ran a bunch of flights, and it turned out that blue, the one I showed you in the previous screen for the link, was pretty darn effective. In fact, after we tested it and then ran it, that blue, if we had, based on the user engagement it would bring, and the clicks to both ads and more sessions people would have, that is doing more queries over time, it would make $80 to $100 million in a year, just that blue alone. Previously, the live search blue was this kind of faint, soft blue that was sort of like, hey, here's some results. You know, it lacked a bit of confidence. So we certainly think, you know, the contrast, and we found the color and the contrast were actually more important than the actual typeface. So notice they were all Arial. Everyone's found Arial, and we actually tried Verdana and Tahoma 2 to try it out, and that didn't affect the numbers as much as the color did, and the contrast. But Arial did feel more familiar, and you can imagine why. It's kind of been the default, de facto search font for years. So there is a familiarity that comes with that. But the blue itself was big. Here's the hex, by the way, for anyone looking for a blue that we ran that proved quite successful for us and continues to be. You know, it's funny because as we played with those other designs and those comps, the designers kept going, I want to try red links or, you know, brown links or no links or whatever. And, you know, it was so hard to argue with this. And this is kind of the point. You know, how does science and art come together sometimes? And it's a tough decision. In this case, science helped us make this decision. It was really hard to argue with the success of this color. And hard to argue with the success, you know, it was bringing competitors as well. So I don't know. There might be a search engine in the future that moves away from blue, but right now, blue for links is pretty good. So you probably can't see this because I can't see it on my screen, but those are ads at the top of the page. This was another series of flights we ran. So the query here was flowers. You can see 4 ads at the top. There is a color behind them. It's a very faint blue. It's what we use on the live site today. Arriving at that blue was also a number of experiments we ran. We tried yellow, tried light green, tried no color. The problem with no color is then they no longer look like ads, and people click them. And you might go, well great, right? If I'm an advertiser, great. Let them click the ad and come to my site. Trouble is, advertisers pay for conversions. They want people to come to the site legitimately and do things. They don't want to be, you know, people to be fooled. So it's very important, and this goes back to that principle of earning trust, of being very clear and transparent about what is an ad and what isn't an ad. And although this slide is not really helping my point here because you can't see the color, but there really is a color, and all the search engines I think do a lot of work to optimize it. And we found, doing a number of colors and again adjusting the contrast more and more, that it's like you want ads to look sort of like search results, close enough that people won't pass over them, they'll acknowledge them, but yet differentiated enough that they understand that they're ads, people paid for these, and they may choose to ignore them or not. So here, this goes back some time. But this is a good example of where we as designers thought one thing and the science proved us quite wrong. So the concept here was the concept we call an answer. So user types population of China. That's a query we can interpret pretty darn well and actually provide an answer for in a split second. Right? There's 1.3 billion people at the time. This was 2006, I guess. You know, lived in China. I can answer that question for you as a user instantaneously, and you can be on your way. So we were like, okay, cool. We've invented this thing called answers, and now they're pretty common across all search engines for a certain class of queries. You know, you can imagine all kinds of things. What's the weather right now? What's show times for this movie? Whatever. Go ahead and show me that. Don't tell me about necessarily sites that have it. I have to go click and figure it out some more. That's commodity information that's probably not going to change. Just give it to me. So we came up with this thing, and we're like, all right, let's call it out. We'll bold it. We'll indent it. We'll put this little chevron thing in here. We'll make this text gray, whereas most text is black. And we were all excited about answers. Turns out this was terrible because, A, it wasn't aligned, so people just passed right over it. So the more it looked different than the search result itself, the more people just flew right by. So this is one of those where we, in design, wanted to call it out as special, when really the design that served the point and served actually the user value the best was a design that looked like a search result. So we left aligned it, got rid of that chevron, changed the color, and made it look more like just a regular search result. And click-through, not necessarily click-through, but page engagement, overall user satisfaction went through the roof on all of our answers. Similarly on ads, for some reason, I don't know why we thought, and that might be a mistake too, that indented design made sense. So we fixed that and just made the right column align. Also put in rules so that the description never wrapped to more than 3 lines. Again, revenue numbers quadrupled, went up a ton, just because we paid attention to how the thing was laid out, how easy it made it easier to parse and to skim and scan. So another series of tests we ran were on performance. You could say, well, duh, did you even need to ask this question? Like, does performance matter in search? Yeah, it does, but we wanted to find out, like, what is the threshold? At what point are users turned off by speed or the lack thereof? So we added some artificial delays, both server-side and client-side. Added a 1 second delay and then a 2 second delay. You can imagine user engagement dropped a ton. People just don't want to wait. They don't want to wait for search. So 1 second delay was bad enough. Let's see, ads were down, number of searches they did were down, time to first click was down 7%. So even that 1 second delay just held people up enough. 2 seconds doubled all those numbers, as you can imagine. We also found that server-side delay was worse. So when we artificially just held the page back and then spit it out to the user, less engagement than when we added the delay on the client side. So our solution then, what we learned and the takeaway was that load the page progressively, as you can imagine, and in search, the perceived performance was much more important than the actual full page rendering. So just start rendering results as fast as possible, even if the page itself needs to take a little bit longer. Because that was important to us because we needed to figure out how can we add these groups. Because I showed you before, the concept of categorized search adds a lot more to the page, and with a lot more to the page, even though it's just text, comes page weight, and with page weight comes delays. So it was important to try to figure out what was that threshold. Where would people stay? Where would they go? So we also ran these types of tests where we added the extra information, and to find out, we think it's going to help. We think that people want to know when they're searching for auto insurance, they want to see the rates and the quotes and the agents, but is it too much? Does the page get a little too overwhelming and now you got to parse through a ton more stuff, blah, blah, blah. It turned out as we added more to the page, actual engagement improved. People clicked more links, they did more queries, they were more satisfied. So that was huge. Again, I don't know if we necessarily would have learned that in focus groups or in usability lab. It took putting this out there to millions of folks in a scientific way to figure it out. So that was A/B testing. I took a little longer on that than I wanted to. Eye tracking is another one of our big tools. Anyone here ever messed with eye trackers? Ever seen them? A few folks. They're pretty cool. I actually have a video of one. So basically, they're this thing. Let's see. What's my sentence? Eye trackers track and record eye movement on a screen in real time. It's not intrusive, so it's not like your participants have to wear big headgear or anything. Uses high-resolution sensors that are calibrated to each participant before each study, and they measure each point or gaze from the eye and display the data as a colored heat map. So let me just show you kind of what it looks like on the screen. So here's the red dot is the user's eye as they're typing a query and then executing it. And this is pretty cool because this shows really how their eye is parsing the page. Obviously, the bigger the red dot is, the longer they're hanging out there. I mean, of course, it's all measured in sub-second, but as the dot starts to grow, it means how long they're. Let me play it again. But I think you kind of get the point. But we run these every time we do anything significant to the design and put it in the lab. And again, the users don't really know. I mean, it's a small little device there. They know they're calibrated for their eye tracking, but it doesn't get in their way. And we just have them run a bunch of queries, and you can kind of just see how they they digest the page and what they find important. Very insightful for us. Again, very qualitative. I mean, we're doing this over handfuls of users, but they really help validate where do people's eyes go and what provides a visual roadblock. So you can imagine you do that on a bunch of users, and you put all the data together, it starts to generate a heat map, and you can start to see patterns come together. And a company named Inquiro, I don't know if you've ever heard of them, they kind of specialize in this. If you're ever looking for eye tracking help, they are not paying me by any means. We wind up buying our own eye tracker and do our own studies, but they're kind of known in the industry for helping folks out. But they ran this study, and you can sort of see a similarity here. For search engines, people parse them in the same ways. They call this the golden triangle and it's literally the triangle in the upper left of the search results. People scan quickly down, then start scanning over in an F-shape pattern. As you can imagine, most people click on result number 1, starts to drop on results 2 and results 3, and then after that it really drops precipitously. But this really shows us that golden triangle is very important. This, of course, when I was talking to you before about like where do we put our categories, on the left, on the top, on the right, this was a big concern to us because we felt, well, crap, if we put them in the left, do we risk messing with the golden triangle? Do we risk that? And the beauty of using eye tracking was to find out that we don't. So here, an early design for a hippo or something. Billy the pygmy hippo, I have no idea what that is. That was the search result. But here, you can see the user had no trouble reorienting herself to the search results. Result number 1 was exactly what they wanted, and the heat map showed us that they found it. No real time spent over here. Now, the heat maps don't necessarily show everywhere the eye goes. They just show where the user actually focused, where they spent time. Because everywhere the eye goes, obviously, would be just a mess. But you really care about, I mean, our eyes track so much so quickly. You really care about, well, where do you linger? Where do you start focusing? Because when you're focusing, you're likely reading or parsing. So we even made it tougher. Added the full left column, added a row of images, which, as you may or may not know, users hit a row of images, and it's kind of a visual roadblock. You sort of stop. But here, again, no trouble reorienting themselves to the results and finding result number 1. Very encouraging for us. So then, based on that, we put the categories on the left and on the right. So here are some, what were these things called? Basically 2 different designs. In this green box are those categories. So here they are on the left side of the page, here they are on the right side of the page. This was the fixation count. So how long, where did people click and how long did they stay? This was super encouraging because we did feel our gut of putting them in the left was the right call. You could see a little bit more engagement of the results when the categories were on the right, but the categories really got nothing. And the categories were, again, going back to those principles, were our big bet. We wanted people to see them. We were spending a ton of time and technology to figure out that these categories made sense and would help users, but hiding them in the UI was kind of shooting ourselves in the foot. So we needed to validate that they were in the right spot. So this really helped. You can see, though, that these numbers do go down a little bit here, and that could be a cause of concern. Like, well, by putting it on the left, are you taking away from clicks on the results? But it turns out clicking in here, in the refinements, in the categories, is actually beneficial to users. We find the more refinements they do, typically the happier they are, the more likely they're able to find what they're looking for.
Did you guys do a study with languages that go the other way?
Yes, yeah, we did do the left to right and found the same thing, because it was very important for our left to right languages. Yeah. So this was good. So combine eye tracking with these click studies really helped us answer that location question. And it's funny, I mean, we're certainly not the first person to do a left column. Again, that was what was helpful. Left column navigation is a pretty standard convention that's been around for ages. So we felt comfortable knowing we were at least entering a ground of something that would be familiar, predictable to users. Problem was it didn't really exist in search. Now I've seen a Google version of a left column. I've seen Yahoo launched a left column. Left column starting to feel right in search. And I think it's because all of us are hungry for UI surface area. There's a lot more we can offer in search. It's not just 10 blue links. There are more tools, more refinements, but there's not a lot of room on the page. So being able to open up that left column and being able to give ourselves more room to offer refinements and other helpful tools to help users with queries is huge. So I think interesting to see that the sort of paradigm of the page layout is starting to change. As you can imagine, much like you guys do, we do instrumentation, analytics on our pages. Everything is measured. It's like, what's that phrase about being like baseball? Baseball, they measure everything. I think, yeah, all baseball statistics, every statistic. We try to do the same thing. Certainly all the standard stuff like browser size, window size, resolution, OS. But even things like scrolling. Do users scroll? And they do, from what we can tell. Even though they mostly click the first result, but they will scroll down to see what they're missing, and then they go back up and click the first result. So again, using instrumentation analytics and having a full team of people to pour through that and analyze it is huge. So that's another big tool in our sort of science toolbox. User testing. the full gamut there. Focus groups, surveys, user diaries, site visits, cognitive walkthroughs, heuristic evaluations, iterative testing, longitudinal field studies. The full gamut of user research goes into it. I mean, not all the time. Obviously, it's not quite sustainable. But certainly when we're going to do something big, like a complete site redesign, and getting deep into it. So one of the fun parts of working in Microsoft is the resources available and the ability to have this crack team of user researchers go help you answer user experience questions. It's pretty awesome. So we definitely take use of that, take advantage of that. And then lastly, the Microsoft research team, which is not part of my product team at Bing, but lots of researchers there writing lots of papers on how people use search, how people seek information, how they go forage for things, and they bring that data back to us with reports and so forth. So another really interesting source of information that we tap. So that sort of ends the science part, and I know I went sort of fast there, but as you can imagine, it's a full toolbox of things. But on the other side, there's the art side. Like how do we go validate ideas and concepts that you can't necessarily do through an A/B test, that a focus group will only give you a little insight into. I liken it a bit to, you go to the store, you need to buy a can opener, and there's a class of us who will just grab one can opener, and there's another type of person, and it might be more of us, will make that decision based on how that can opener feels in your hand, how it looks. That's the can opener I want. It appeals to me. It feels good. I connect with it on some level, even though it's a friggin' can opener. Some people will make that purchase decision based on that. Not surprisingly, and I know this is going to shock you, there was a 2005 study that found that people will persevere longer in a search task on a site whose design appeals to them. Imagine that. So apparently if you like the thing and it appeals to you and you can connect with it emotionally, you'll spend a little bit more time there. Again, another thing we were after with Bing was connecting to our users, investing in things that made them fans of us. We weren't just another search commodity, another quick command line that jumped you off to a site and you didn't know our name. So we started oh yeah, forgot about this one. This one talks a little bit briefly about the power of color. This is an old design from 2006. And I talked a bit about the power of color in the search link color. Here it was the power of color in the header. So this was the design that we updated. Prior to that, the header was blue. The page was exactly the same. Header was blue. The blue links were white. And the butterfly was reversed. The butterfly logo was reversed out. That's it, just blue. We switched that. We switched it to gray. Just tried it. Press went crazy. Microsoft's now a player in the game. Check out all their features. Literally, all we did was change the header from blue to gray, and suddenly we got a ton of press. And it was just one of those things where people may not have lingered very much, but when they did and they noticed the difference, they decided to check out other features. And tons of scrutiny and tons of attention come from just that color change. Perhaps our most conspicuous feature in terms of making an emotional connection to users is Bing.com, the homepage. So in the Olympics, Summer Olympics, 2006, we decided to play with this concept of displaying an image twice a day based on events that had happened the day before, the night before in the Olympics, or the morning of. Just tried it. Nothing to lose. Why not? Give it a whirl. Hugely successful. It was crazy. It was like we'd stumbled upon, I don't know, something certainly we hadn't seen before, which was just people gushing over this concept. We found we had a bit of a hit on our hand. We knew we wanted to do something. We knew we wanted to do something with the homepage. We knew we wanted to, like I said, work on these types of features that made emotional connections to people. And so we did some research. We mocked up a bunch of things, and we showed them a number of concepts. And the one that sort of resonated the most were these richer pages. But we had no idea if it would really hold up. It certainly hold up when we launched it to the world. So we played with this idea. Like it was a big hit, and we decided to stick with it. Going back to, again, what helped us sort of arrive at a design was establishing a pretty clear mission from the beginning as well. In this case, it was enhancing user sense of discovery, surprise, delight, while still balancing the engineering realities. As you can imagine, the engineering realities of a page like that is a lot, especially when the biggest competitor out there is 10K page loads sub-second. And here we go to the devs, and we're like, hey, what about an 80K JPEG? Can we make that work? And they're like, are you kidding? Like, you guys are insane. But, and I give the dev lead a ton of credit because he got the idea. He's like, this has got some real potential. Let's try this out. So they grabbed a few devs. They do what devs do, open some Mountain Dew, got in a room, and figured it out. Sorry, that's a terrible stereotype. I love Mountain Dew. And they literally figured it out. And the solution there was literally lazy loading the image, which is render the page instantly, render the search box instantly. Don't get in the user's way of searching, the primary task on the page. But on faster connections, even on slower connections, just bring the image in right behind it. So you get the page instant. The photo comes, based on your connection, either a second or a couple seconds later. So it was really cool. Worked great. Tested it. Worked across all browsers. Tested it with, like I said, adding lag, and it worked like a champ. And then we came up with this concept of hotspots. And I don't know if you've used the page, but if you bring it up, you'll notice these little spots appear, and then they go away. And if you hover over them, you get a little fact about the photo. Again, didn't want to get in your way, didn't want to be in your face with any sort of features that really probably had nothing to do with anything you were looking for at the moment. But again, to appeal to those people who like to be delighted, who like to be surprised, who are willing to hang out and hunt for things, these little sort of visual Easter eggs were there. And again, this resonated great with people. They loved it. They wanted to use the site, regardless of the search they wanted to do. They wanted to check it out, figure out what the picture is, and play with the hotspots. Wrote some design principles. Again, coming back to the things that help us be successful, I think, with taking this design from concept to reality. Enhancing the search, not hindering it. I mentioned before, page loaded instantly. Wanted focus set inside the search box. The split second you typed the domain name and it rendered, so you could immediately start typing a query. That was paramount. Don't use the page. Preserve users' trust. Don't use the page to promote a ton of our own stuff. Right? Let it just be beautiful. Let it be simple. Let it just be. Be artful but not newsy. We during the election, we did a John McCain day and we did a Obama day, and that was such a mistake. So learn not to use the page for political things. Just you can imagine there is no picture of either one of those that the supporters did or did not like. Like, we just got so much flack for that. So we've tried to stay away from politics. Learn that a bit the hard way, even though in retrospect it sounds so simple. Let's see. Strive for subtlety and poetry. People don't necessarily need to know it's 9/11 or Columbus Day or Pearl Harbor Day to know what the picture's about. Like, I think for our first September 11th version of the picture, we just did a single candle all by itself on black. People got it. They thought it was cool. It was elegant. Didn't have to necessarily do a big shamrock on St. Pat's and so forth. So it offers an avenue to be creative and subtle and a bit poetic. So for those that don't know the page, I'll just show you kind of a few examples of these are the ones that users typically, again, as you can imagine, like in baseball, we measure everything. So how successful was a particular page, and it changes every day. So over one day over another, how did people engage with it? So these are some of the more successful ones over the past few months. So Mount Vesuvius in Italy. This is in Malaysia, a big sky bridge. Austria, a crystal. It's like I don't know what it is, but it's Germany. White Sands. Sorry, where's this one? Oh, Scotland. Falkirk Wheel in Scotland. Ethiopia, desert in Ethiopia. Start to throw in some animals sometimes. Red panda. What's that? No, but it's funny you say that because at one point we showed a snow leopard on the page. Yeah. You can imagine the blogs. The poor photo editor who chose it that day, she was like, no, this thing's cool. It was a snow leopard. And the write-ups on how Microsoft was taking a swipe at Apple and their new OS. I was like, no, it's just a snow leopard. Yeah. Yeah, I guess it could be. It could be, yes. So I can say, go on record, that we are not trying to make any statements with the photos toward competitors. But yes, sometimes coincidence happens. The poor woman who did pick the snow leopard, she's like, I didn't know. So yes, you could say this is a very cute Firefox. Hawaii. This one was the other day. I like this one a lot, this jellyfish. It felt kind of cool. As you can imagine, the composition of the photos is important, trying to leave the search box area free, but yet sort of have the area of interest down at the bottom right. So I talked a bit about the love letters we got. I wanted to read just a couple to you. Don't want to belabor the point too much, but for us, it was huge. It was important to build a fan base and important to connect with people. And the letters that we get about the homepage continue to reinforce that. So I finally had to tell you, the spectacular daily photos add a joy to my day. My husband and I will often say to each other, have you seen the picture today? Puts a smile on my face. I switched from Google on September 11th. You're checking out your page. It's the first thing I do in the morning. I learn about a new place every day. And I think this woman is probably one of those explorers. This page resonates to her because she wants to learn about a new place every day. One of the bits of feedback we hear is from, and we've heard this a number of times, there are teachers in classrooms who will use the page every morning and just show it to the kids and then go click and figure out where it is and then tell them where in the world this was and put a little pin in the map or talk about the snow leopard and the other operating system alternatives one could have. It's pretty cool that teachers use this. The kids do it. My daughter loves it. She helped me pick some of the Olympic photos when we were doing it originally, and she thought it was the greatest thing ever. It's funny. She'll have battles in class with her friends on Google versus Bing. They're like 9. They have no idea, but I was like, well, what do you guys talk about? What are you actually battling? And she's like, oh yeah, it gets very heated. I'm like, okay. I want to let you know how much I love waking up, or how much I love the service, waking up to the beautiful images. Again, something about the morning, something about the freshness of the picture daily is key to folks. And again, part of that was deliberate too. Search is not a static thing, right? The web is not static, and we felt like something that changed really frequently helped echo that a bit. And we carried the photo even on the results page, because a lot of folks don't even come through the homepage. They come through MSN or other places. And my own personal favorite, one who cannot appreciate the majesty and beauty of your homepage has no soul. I kid you not. This is not my mom. But there's some gems that have come through. But for the most part, they blow us away in sort of the sincerity and sort of the emotions that this little simple feature evokes. And I think that's another lesson that this certainly taught us too, is about simplicity. It's a picture. It's a picture that sits behind a search box. It's so simple. But yet crazy effective.
So you have a photo editor for stitching and picture for the viewing data?
Yes, yeah. And we do it around the world as well. We also have editors in various parts of the world who pick those in market. Because sometimes it's a bit presumptuous to pick a photo for other cultures, and sometimes there's just things you can't always know. So we try to be sensitive to that internationally as well. But yeah, it's grown. It's now a few folks picking the photos. So it's pretty cool. And they do it daily, and they come in. It's a fun meeting to go to because you just put up a ton of pictures on the wall, and you start kind of picking which one makes people want to see, and it's fun. And I give them a lot of credit because I think they continue to do it day after day. I've not seen one and been like, nah, that does nothing for me. They're always spectacular, and I have no part of that, so I'm not boasting up here. But they do a good job maintaining the quality, so it's pretty fun. How am I on time? We never started the time. That's fine. Let me. We end at 2:30. Yeah. Let me jump into another one real quick. So another feature we wanted to get to, again, I don't think we would have arrived at it through data analysis, wouldn't have arrived at it through iterative testing of this color over this color, was a feature around visual search. So how do we help users? We know in search you're trying to go from many to one oftentimes. I'm trying to make a decision. I'm trying to pick a thing from a sea of many things. how do we build a UI to help users do that? How do we make it easy to formulate complex searches? So let me show you an example. In fact, let me just go to the live site. Here it is. Here was the dogs. So I like this example a lot. It's using Silverlight. Sometimes people have a complex query to write. Like in this case, I'm looking for a dog for my family. I want the dog to be hypoallergenic. I want it to be a certain weight, and I want it to be good with kids. How do you write that in a search engine? Like, that's not necessarily easy to do. You're going to try dog breeds perhaps, and then start clicking on sites and eventually drilling down. Visual search allows you to sort of get at that pretty quickly. So here's all dogs. What is it? 161 dog breeds. Let me reduce it down to the hypoallergenic ones. Let me go to maybe medium-sized dogs. And let me find one that are, gentle, because I've got a little kid. There we go. So there's my dog. I don't know how you say that. Anyone know? Yes. And then clicking on that now takes me to the search for it. So within, a couple clicks, narrowed down 161 dog types to one. Then now I might really want to start researching and try to figure out, is this really the dog for us? Hypoallergenic, small, gentle. So visual search was a pretty cool concept. Again, trying to get at people's sense of delight and willingness to go hunt, and as well as being practical in as much as it can also help. iPhone apps. Movies, I think, is kind of fun. Trying to find movies, or even picking a travel destination. Again, complex thing to write as a single search, but pretty fun to go drill down into this. See, I am almost done. You saw those. A few books I want to recommend that I found helpful and that are interesting. Marty Hurst just published a book recently called Search User Interfaces. I think it's the first book written about actual UX of search and search results. I know people have written tons of books about algorithms and being relevant, but this one's about search UX. Jacob Nielsen's book on eye tracking, again, interesting, especially if you think that that's germane to your area and figuring out where users' eyes go in your particular products is useful. Don Norman's got a good book about emotional design, not really necessarily about web, but just about why we gravitate towards certain things. Why does this thing just speak to me? I work with a guy who drives a Mini Cooper, and he loves the key fob. And the Mini Cooper for him is just the key fob. It's the right weight and everything. He just, it's funny, those small little touches, those small little things that just resonate to people. How do you make those emotional connections? And then Steve Krug, his book, I think, is just an absolute gem. If you haven't read it, and probably most of you already have, I highly recommend it. It's a great plane ride book, too. And I make no commission off selling this book in any way, shape, or form. But he also talks about, too, and I remember I mentioned before having Microsoft resources for usability testing and all those people and all that stuff is nice. This book also talks about, like, what happens when you don't? What happens if it's just you? What do you do? How do you still go get quality data without eye trackers and usability labs and one-way mirrors and video cameras and all that stuff? So that is it. Yes. Betsy wants me to talk about quickly, and then we'll maybe open it for questions. So there's a Bing tweet up or meetup at the East Side Lounge at the Wynn tonight from 6 to 8. Everyone is welcome. Free drinks till our tab runs out, it says here. emceed by Scott Hanselman. So if you don't have plans or plans, I guess, before the actual LAX big party tonight, come by the Wynn Encore and have some drinks. So I'm sorry I did not leave much room for questions. I'm happy to take some, and I'll be here tonight as well, too, if you want to talk more about any details. Any questions, Sal? What's that?
How many people are on the team?
The UX team?
Yeah.
Pretty big and growing. We're hiring, I don't know, total 30-ish. Yeah, getting up there as far as designers, user researchers, editors go. Yeah, a few years back it was like 2. So it's been growing. It's been great. I think the Bing launch, it helped. It helped also, too, people realize, search isn't just, you can imagine doing design in search. It's just 10 blue links. How hard is it? It's a search box. You type something, 10 blue links come up. Do I really need to design this? But launching this and launching all the variations and all that stuff, started to show people like search design has got a lot of potential. I'm super excited, sorry, one more sec, about what is the next search UI, right? Is it always going to look like that? What's the next big thing? And that I think is attracting more talent and helping us grow. Oh, yeah, good catch. We did not want to disclose the name internally, even internally, but we had to mock stuff up. And we wanted something that, I knew the name, a few folks knew the name because we kind of needed to. We wanted something about the right size and with the same sort of ascenders and descenders. So at one point there was a Kiev, which was the code name of the release. That just sort of worked out because the K sort of matched the B. But then we added a G on the end. It became Key Egg because we needed in design to have that descender G come down so we could see how that would play out. And that sort of tipped the hat a little too much. But yeah, that's what it was. We did do a bunch of testing, as you can imagine, on the name. The name was a huge initiative just to try to figure out. And they narrowed it down to a few. Kumo was one of the names that was up there as well, too. And that we had in the comps.
You guys, at one point during the betas of Live, did some comparison between continuous scrolling versus paging?
Yes.
Search results? What?
Image results, we continuously scroll on image results. Infinite scroll, it's called. So you literally don't scroll. And it's kind of cool. It's also fraught with a number of UX challenges. People like to kind of know how much to scroll, and they don't. We did not find it very effective on actual text results. But image results and video results and media, it lended itself a little bit more towards. But text-wise, it was tough.
How do you guys reevaluate the tests that you run and the metrics that you gathered from A/B tests? Do you reevaluate?
Absolutely, that's a great point. I forgot to talk about it. Every feature team has what they call a live site scorecard. So when you launch a feature, you kind of have the base metrics on how well that did. And they evaluate that every month to find out, like, okay, so when I introduced Blue, and the numbers spiked and it looked awesome, was that just a temporary thing? Did it sustain its growth over time? So every feature team, and as you can imagine, almost every element of the page has a feature team behind it, has these live site scorecards and refers them all the time. So that's kind of the way we sort of keep a pulse. It's very easy in a place that big to kind of publish to production and forget, but the scorecards help keep us a bit honest. So I think that's it. Thank you guys very much.